With the reasons that manual route summarization can benefit us fresh in our minds from the last video, let's go ahead and look at a scenario, and we're going to do this live as well, where route summarization can really come in handy. I've removed the subnets from routers 2 and 3. As a matter of fact, router 3 isn't even involved here. And what we're concentrating on are 7 subnets that I've created on router 1, and I'm currently advertising to EIGRP neighbor router 2 via the network command. Nothing fancy at all. And actually, let's go ahead and take a look at those. Here they are. And you can see they're 101.0.0 through 107.0.0. And you can see I pinged a couple of the loopbacks, 105.1.1 and 107.1.1. Just picked a couple out of random. But we could have one single line replace all 7 of these routes. And we really like that idea. So how are we going to do this? How do we know whether we can summarize these routes with one line or not? I mean, besides taking my word for it, I'm a pretty bright guy. What we want to do is write them out in binary. That's where we start. That's where we start everything, it seems. But of course, for you at this point, that is no problem at all. Now, you don't have to write out the 3rd and 4th octets because they're all zeros. But go ahead and write out 101 and then 102, 103, and we'll work from there. And I'll just talk here for a second while you pause the video to do your homework. And now we'll press on. This is actually the hardest part of route summarization, and it's not even hard. I know you had likely no issues at all with breaking those down into binary. And if it's been a little while, you're a little rusty, that's fine, but we need to knock that rust off before you take your exam. Now, what do we do after we break them down into binary strings, which is what I've done here, and I even note on the board. You know, this is actually the hardest part of summarizing routes. Well, we actually need 2 values right now. We need the summary route and we need a mask. That mask is not optional. We have to have it. And actually, we have both of those values right in front of us right now. I kid you not. Now, to get the summary, all we do is work from left to right, and there's a huge hint here as to the numbers that are bold and which ones aren't. And we just work from left to right and identify the common bits. Now, the common bits can be zeros or ones, and what I mean by that is, you know, for the first bit, do these 7 addresses all have a 0 or a 1? Well, that's the case for the first 13 rows. It's the 14th row where the first 3 subnets have a 0 and the last 4 subnets have a 1. That is where the common bits then end. And all you have to do to get the summary route itself is add up those values that we have in bold right now, the common bits. And we don't even have to write that out, really. We've already got it in front of us in binary. But to convert it back to decimal, we know those first 8 bolded bits are 100. And we know the last 5 bits there, the first 5 bits in the second octet, I should say, are all zeros. So our value, our route, is 100. 0, 0, 0. That's it. But we also have to have a mask. And the mask value is right in front of us as well. Now in prefix notation, what is this mask? If the first 13 bits are bolded, then in prefix notation it's going to be /13. But we need the value in dotted decimal for this command. And all we have to do, we've got 13 common bits, we know that. What is the value of the 32-bit binary string that we use for our masks if the first 13 bits are all set to 1, if they're the common bits? 255, 248, 00. That's it. That is the hardest part. Now we're going to go out to the router and actually apply it. And even though we're on router 2 right now, we need to go to router 1. Pardon the bell, that's the one actually with the advertising the routes, that's the one that we need to have send out the summary. The odd thing about this command is that you are not going to put it in your EIGRP config. You're going to advertise the summary on the interface that you want it to be advertised upon. So let's go to 10, and we know it's a bit of a long-winded command. We have some IP summary address. And we definitely want to put EIGRP here. And then we have to put our AS number. Keep that in mind. That's a good question for, multiple choice. They show you a summary address command. It's like, hey, what's this number in the middle? And it's the autonomous system number. EIGRP, you almost always have to put the autonomous system number. The next value where it says IP address, that is actually the summary route itself. and we came up with 100,000. And then finally, the network mask we came up with was 255.248.00, and that's it. So I hit enter, and you'll notice that I have a couple of resyncs here because I still had the adjacency to router 3 from the previous lab, even though we weren't looking at router 3 in this lab. So both of my adjacencies there were resynced, and note it says again summary configured, and we know where that came from because we just configured it. So the deal is, though, on router 2, are we by default going to see only the summary? Are we still going to see the more specific routes, the ones we saw earlier, along with the summary? Or have we done something wrong and we're only going to see the non-summarized routes? Let's take a look. Nothing to it. We are only going to see the summarized route by default with EIGRP. Now, during the BGP section, which you're really going to enjoy, and I mean that, it's great material, it's a tough topic, and we're going to take it apart piece by piece. We're going to do some route summarization over there as well, and there's a situation that by default, I believe, the more specific routes are advertised along with the summary. And the only reason I'm bringing that up now is I want to point out to you here as you're seeing live with EIGRP that you are not going to see the more specific routes by default. You'll only see the summary. But can I still ping those addresses that I could ping earlier? Sure can. Matter of fact, I could ping every single one of those loopbacks that we've summarized. So, let's see. Let's go back to the route. We've got it right here, actually. And down on router 2, we see the AD of this route is 90. Well, isn't the summary route supposed to have an AD of 5? It will, but only on the router that it's being advertised from. That's a locally significant value only. As the summary is advertised through EIGRP, it's going to keep that AD of 90 if it's internal, which of course it is. So let's see. I want to show you a little something funky up here on router 1, though. So we've got 100.0.0/8 is variably subnetted, 8 subnets, 2 masks, etc. Here's our summary, but notice that it doesn't have an administrative distance. There's something you don't see real often. Check that out. There's nothing here. And it says is a summary, that's fine, but what's with this null 0 jazz? What's going on there? Well, this is actually default behavior. I've seen this question asked a zillion times out there on my boards and occasionally on the Cisco boards when I check in there. And people are always saying, well, you know, I didn't configure a null 0. I don't know where that's coming from. It comes automatically when you create that summary route. And I'll tell you why. It's actually a routing loop prevention mechanism. Because, you know, right now, your summarization questions are going to be nice and neat. You know, we didn't have any problem summarizing those 7 routes with one line, but it does get more complex than that. And let's just say, actually, let's do a quick show config here. Let's just say that this loopback 104 network that I created for this exercise, 104.1.1, let's say that didn't exist. But we went ahead and put out that summary route anyway because we thought, well, you know, it includes 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7 in the summary, so it'll be okay. But what if packets come in for a network that's part of a summary but doesn't actually exist? What if this 104 wasn't here and packets came in for 104.1.1? A routing loop can form that way. And what happens is, the reason that we have that route to null 0 on router 1 is if packets come into router 1 and the route does not actually exist that is part of the summary, then the packets can be cleanly disposed of. Basically, it's a route to the trash can. And I want to show you that one more time. I'm trying to escape out of it. I'm not doing a very good job. And let's see. Here's our summary right here in the middle. And it's 100.0.0/13 is a summary. Null 0, again, it's a route to the trash can. If the next hop for your or the exit interface is null 0, that means it's not going anywhere. And again, it's a routing loop prevention mechanism to prevent packets from coming in that are part of the summary, but the network doesn't actually exist. And in that case, router 1 has a way to go ahead and get rid of them, say if you're out of here. And that's all there is to it. And I know you're thinking now, well, that's not all there is to it. I want to see that AD of 5. I'm going to show you that and a couple of other things at the beginning of the very next video. Sorry to tease you, but that's the way the timer goes. I will see you on the next vid.